All right, we've got a Darth Vader. Darth Vader. Assalamu alaikum, Darth Vader.
Walaikum salam. Can you hear me?
I can indeed. Oh,
Perfect. How's it
how
going? You okay?
it's going well. Lillah alhamd, alhamdulillah.
Good, good.
Hey, what's going on? Where are you joining us from?
I'm from the northwest at the moment,
All right. I
so
do, man.
near Bolton.
Okay. Bolton Sharif.
Yeah.
Allah, Allah. So let me just. I'm, yeah. So all right. So what's going on? What's on your mind? What? Share some thoughts
I've
or
got actually a few
a
questions.
question.
I'll
Whoa. Okay.
if you if I've got time, we'll go through a few. But if not, then one will
Sure.
suffice, I
Sure.
guess.
Sure. Now let's see. Sure. Go for it.
Right.
Let's.
So basically, I'm looking into like familiarizing myself with Quran and the stories and what was
Okay.
going on in the Prophet's life. Um, So I want to take a different look at it instead of just reading the Quran as it is.
Reading the Quran. Yeah.
Yeah,
Quran. Yeah.
some might think it's blasphemous, but right. So basically, right, um, the Quran was obviously revealed surah by surah, right?
Okay. Surah
Now,
or verse by verse? It could be just verse. It doesn't have to be entire.
well, I don't know. I think it may have been, chapter by chapter, but it could be verse by
Sure.
verse. I don't know.
Sure. Sure.
Obviously, I'm
Sure.
just looking into this, so. I
Sure.
was
Sure. Sure.
hoping you could provide me with some information actually. Um, so I Googled, obviously order of revelation,
Okay.
and one or two websites came up listing, the order that they believe that the verses or the chapters were revealed.
Okay.
Now, do you have any information on how accurate and reliable that list may be?
The exact sequencing of each verse, you mean?
Yeah,
Is that what you mean?
chronologically.
Or yeah, I think that would be quite difficult to be honest. I think that's going to be quite a stretch to get that
Okay.
in. Yeah, because I think there will be obviously there will be a lot of I mean there'll be like a rough um I don't know, like a mapping out of it. So you could understand that, for example, this was the first verse, this may have been the last verse, the early surahs, these were Meccan, this kind of came out in Medina. You may get some idea because they may be talking about incidents which you can link and kind of map them with anchors to, like chronological anchors. But then other verses exactly. So, for example, did this verse come exactly before this one? They both came in this kind of time in Medina. We don't. I don't know. I feel that would be really difficult because, in that sense, if you're talking an exact, precise sequencing of the chronological order of each verse A to Z of the Quran, I don't think. Have you found something that said that it
Um,
offered it? You
Only
found
what I
something like
found
that?
online, which is apparently, official. I don't know how accurate it is, um, but I mean, I find that a bit disturbing, to be honest. I would
Okay.
think, we know all of these minor stories and little things about the prophet, yet we don't know the order of revelation, which was the most important thing that he was here for.
Okay, sure. But would you feel the Prophet ﷺ was here for revelation or the order of revelation?
Well,
Because that might
he would
be
have been here for,
slightly different.
I think it's implied that if he's here for, revelation. Oh,
What's
what
happened
happened?
here? Sorry, right there. No, sorry.
Well, if
Yeah,
he's Mufti thought this is a difficult question, get rid of this guy.
I don't know. I tried it. I tried it. It
So
didn't work.
basically, would it if his main objective was
Oh, this.
delivering the Quran, right? Then
Yeah.
surely people would have documented it, like when did this verse come out, right? I mean,
Mhm.
we get told about goats eating like pages of the Quran but we don't know the
But do
order
you
of the
think
revelation. This is a bit like,
no, there's a
you know,
difference, I think, in saying, do we know the order? And there's a difference in saying, for example, did they document the order? Like, did they feel? You see, the order, I think, is interesting for us because it's information about something we're interested in. So it's like saying, let's say, you want to learn something about your grandparents. Now, yes, there's a thing about their life that everybody would know, but there will be so many things that maybe, for example, you might ask your parents now, oh, so, in that year when he was going to school, would he, what door would he go through? Or would he often do, I don't like, people don't, to them, that isn't the purpose of the narrative. Like, so you see, to people, revelation was important, and the fact that it came down, let's say, with certain circumstances, they were documented. But let's say you're saying, so we have the Makkah, we have the Medina, and we have these things, we have other asbabun nuzul. People will say, look, with this event, or this surah came here, or these ahkam came in this year. They have that. But if you're saying every single verse in an exact, so we would say, for example, starting from A to Z of the Quran, this we put a calendar date, like a precise, like, let's say, I know we're using, just as an example, let's just say 23rd Rajab this year, 17 Dhul Qa'dah this year, 18 Sha'ban this year, like an exact calendar date with every single thing. I don't think they would have done that because they wouldn't have seen why that was important. They would have
but
seen that the revelation is important, but why is the date important?
well, that gives you context of the Prophet's lifestyle. Well, not lifestyle, but life. What he went through, when he went through it, who was he talking to? So I think it's very important. Are you not concerned by that, or?
I mean, concern. Why? I would agree with you that, sure. Let's say they did. Let's say they did document it. I think it would have been definitely very interesting in adding a nuance. Like, so you could have so for example, we would have a nuance of saying, well, this is the precise date of this particular verse, and it would give a little kind of a nuance to it. But I don't think it would change the verse in any way. It wouldn't change the meaning. It wouldn't really alter. And you have to remember, look, the Arabs, when this came, the Quran was revealed to a people who were primarily defined as ummi. Like, they were not, you see, the scribes, the academic, today's word would be academic, because today everybody reads and writes. So to read and write is nothing special. So today you'd be described as an academic. Like, oh, he's an academic, he's doing a PhD. So it's not just he reads and writes, but in that day and age, if we want to use the word, let's say we're borrowing the word academics, it meant like people who were scribes that kept written records. That was not mainly the Arabs. So the Jewish people communities did that. The Arabs generally were not. So the Prophet said in the hadith, "Nahnu ummatun ummiya la naktub wa la nahsab," that we generally, we have like an oral tradition, and we don't keep counts of the dates. Like, wala nahsab, this is why even with the wars and the dates, like, people, when they narrate them, they kind of, you're gonna get discrepancies. People will say, oh, did this happen at this year, or did it happen in that year? And this is also why you have certain other mix-ups, like, for example, when people even, I think part of even the age of Aisha is mixed up like that as well, although there may be other reasons for that as well. But so, not documenting the dates, the Arabs generally were not documenting dates like that. Like, they weren't like kind of writing, like blogging diaries. They weren't doing that. So for them to just all of a sudden become scribes, it's not them. Like, they were literally the way, the closest. This is not a good approximation, it's a poor approximation, but it's just to give you a little idea that in this day and age, what you can relate to. It's like the Vikings, that they just lived off like raiding other tribes, and only a few people cultivated land. Many of them still, they may have hunted. Some of them did foraging. Some of them did hunter-gatherers. They raided. They lived like a very, that's what they weren't, this kind of academic, settled city folk kind of people. So to say that, oh, they should have been all keeping diaries and keeping stuff, I think it would have been, obviously it would have given a nuance to us today. But then there must have been a reason that they were the prime people, that they needed that kind of, maybe that is an essential part of their lifestyle, that kind of rigor.
I'm not actually like talking about specific dates here. I'm just talking about order. So we're not saying that I want to know, was it revealed on the 16th of January?
But how would you know that without having dates?
Well, you would know that, wouldn't you? Like, for instance,
how? Like, if you see, you can only measure that chronologically. Like for me
by
to
events,
say,
for instance,
not events, but through time, you could measure it. Like through a calendar.
For instance, the revelation would have occurred during a certain time, right? So I don't think they were just random. I think they were actually addressing people.
Yeah, but
and communities.
So, yes, but how would you see? What would the markers be? Would they be just ordinal numbers, or would they be in reference to a chronological time frame? How would you? What are the identity markers that you're thinking?
Well, if we know a lot about the Prophet's life, then surely we would know when he said these things.
But how? What would you use? What words would you use to know? What, like, are you talking about calendar time frame, or are you talking about ordinal, as in this is the first, second, third, as in we're just going to have numbers? Or how are you?
No, you just have numbers, wouldn't you? So you wouldn't actually have dates.
You'd have
just
numbers.
have, right. Okay, so
ordinal numbers. Ordinal numbers would never work, because how would they? Because who would be teaching them the ordinal?
For instance, we have been
the
told
Prophet
that
would say
the story of the Prophet started off at the cave, right? You know.
So let's say there's 6,200 verses. So they would be saying, for example, this is today 5,927 Everybody keep count of that. This is, but then everybody's not moving as a massive. How would
I'm not saying it's revealed verse by verse. I'm saying it's revealed surah by surah. So you only.
But they weren't revealed surah by surah. Many were just verses, and many of them, by the way, some verses came later in the surah. So sometimes the Prophet, certain surahs would be completed later on, like they would be there, but then the completion to them or certain verses in them would be much later. And they weren't revealed in like just, so revelation was like, let's say today you've got 114 surah of the Quran. Revelation was not 114 episodes. It was much more. It was a span of 22, 23 years. So, and not everybody, if you say, look, one person is going to keep track, people died along the way. Who is going to be doing the, because, you know, when you say it should be anchored, you need a frame of reference to anchor it. And that only frame of reference I can think of is a calendar. But then they weren't people of calendars. So the other frame of reference you're saying is like an ordinal counting system, which is absurd, because it doesn't really, it seems quite meaningless to say, okay, this is 2,376, everyone. This is 3,422, everyone. This is like, that seems much more confusing than just saying this is in Surah Anfal. That would be an easier way to do it. Because if we started counting verses by, because there are thousands of verses, 6,000 at least, so 6,200 plus. So it's going to be very confusing for people who don't count normally, who are not like I mean, they do count, but they're not a people of accounting. So they're not like people that usually, they have counting, but at a reasonably simple level. Like they will count in like how they trade and do things, like maybe 100, maybe in tens, maybe in whatever, but they're not going to be like 3,722, keep that on a tab. And you see, it's easy for us, we live in a digital age, but but I don't think there's any, I understand the interest, but I don't think it's a concern, because it doesn't compromise anything of the Quran. Nothing of the Quran is compromised.
No, it doesn't compromise anything of the Quran. I'm just trying to understand what the Prophet would have gone through. For instance, why were certain surahs revealed at certain times
Yeah.
and in the order, so that you could see what the Prophet was actually facing. So it's just a different angle of looking at or
But I shall,
validating what we know about the
but
Prophet's
shall I tell
life.
you the blessing of this, though, is that it didn't lock it then in its orbit, and the Quran then maintains its superpositions. You see, had of it done that, maybe generations after may have locked the message of the Quran. That they may have then not, you may not have had the freedom to allow the Quran to speak to you in its in your day-to-day lives. People may have said, no, tough. It only came for this. You can only, when you're feeling only that, then refer to it. You see, the Quran is kind of, it has no lock on how you navigate through it. I mean, you could obviously, you have guidance, like you could take certain stories and it's certain kind of verses and understand, oh, this, when it's mentioning, for example, Hunain, we mentioned the Battle of Hunain today. Obviously, that's talking about the Battle of Hunain. You can see that. But generally, the message of the Quran, for the most part, it can have these superpositions to it. Like it could, maybe you one day are reading it and it means something hits you differently. And another day you're reading it hits you differently. But imagine let's say for 1400 years, everybody had locked it. Then today, you and me may not have had that. We may have been, God knows how it may have come out. In that case, we may have been deprived today of that blessing. So maybe that's a huge blessing, that the Quran is allowed to speak to you with dynamism, that you can come to it with your life and still it speaks to you. And it doesn't have to be locked in its historicity. It's atemporal and it's eternal, in the sense that it's not locked, it's timeless, is a better word, timeless.
So verse by verse revelation doesn't seem to make sense to me, because if, for instance, we're talking about like Surah Maryam, right, where it starts off talking about Zachariah, what was it like?
Oh no,
hold
no,
on,
it
folks,
doesn't mean, no,
part
it doesn't
two will
mean
be
that.
here some other time.
No, it
It's
doesn't
like,
mean, no, it doesn't mean.
How would it have made sense to the audience? What's going on?
Sure, not like that. So there were many surah that there were certain surahs, especially the short ones, that were all revealed together. There were certain verses that were revealed together. Maybe, let's say, for example, 5 verses got revealed here. Maybe that part of the story got revealed, and the other parts were revealed later. What I'm saying is, it wasn't a surah as a chunk model. That it wasn't that there's 114 surahs, so revelation was 114 times. But what it means is it was kind of spread out over 23 years. Now, yes, on certain occasions there were some surahs that were revealed completely, especially the shorter ones, and but at other times mainly they would be verses. So maybe there's 3 verses, 1 verse, maybe 15 verses got revealed. Maybe, obviously, there's 6,000 plus verses to reveal. That is a lot of verses over, 2 decades. So, yeah, so that's how it is. But it doesn't. I get what you're saying, but I don't see it as a. I mean, I understand that if we did have a detailed, a chronological thing, it would have definitely given us a nuance. But I feel where we would have gained, we may have lost. So we have now.
Well, there are people claiming that we do know the order. So, I just thought you might know if it's accurate and reliable to go by.
Okay, I'm not familiar. I'm not familiar. This may be my lack of knowledge. I'm not familiar of an entire chronological sequencing of the Quran. I'm not aware that anybody has done that chronologically, in the sense that they state every verse has a calendar date associated with it. I've never heard of that, to be honest. But if somebody claims that they have that, okay, I don't think that exists. I've never read it in the books in my learning, but maybe if people claim that they have it, I see, like, let's say they claim they have it, it still makes no difference. Like it
makes a big difference.
Really changed. No, I mean, the world, like, the Quran is still there. We're still taking our lessons from it.
I guarantee you, when you start reading them in chronological order, you're going to have a very different appreciation for how the events that the Prophet had to go through.
Of course. No, I'm not denying the study of the Quran and obviously studying asbab is sure. I understand. I do also.
I'll
I do.
Instagram you the link so you can check it out, and
Sure, sure.
maybe
I mean,
you'll be
we look.
oh no,
We
this
have
is
look.
BS, you know.
This you have to understand. This is called asbabun nuzul. We've studied this. Obviously, we studied it for years. You can imagine, right? Asbabun nuzul is what this is called. The causes of revelation. That's what they call it. The problem is it is in the books of tafsir. It's in almost every book. In fact, many authors have just a book as well called Asbab. Suyuti has one. Many other people. The problem with asbabun nuzul is it's mostly not authentic. But okay, even then it gives a little flavoring, and I appreciate that. But it's minimal. It's like the Asbabul Nuzul books will be small. I mean, it's not going to cover every verse of the Quran. In fact, it won't even cover every surah of the Quran. It will just cover like certain things. Oh, this incident happened, and then this verse was revealed, and then it will be challenged. Somebody will say, "Well, actually, no, this happened, and this verse revealed." Some people may say, "Well, maybe a verse was revealed on multiple occasions." I don't know. That's one. Or maybe these chains are all weak anyway, and these people are not really reliable. You've got obviously Kalbi and a lot of these people, all these people doing the transmission, Suddi and all these guys who are famous for Asbab and Nuzul.
I have
Totally
no
weak.
idea these names you're mentioning.
These are very popular names. They're like totally thrown out the window. They're totally unreliable, and some of them are deemed like liars as well. Or and others, if not liars, they're deemed like really weak. So it's not that we haven't heard of Asbab al-Nuzul, and I think, don't get me wrong, I think it's good. And I appreciate, and I think any study of the Quran is always fascinating. And so
you mentioned
for a person who wants
tafsirs,
to
right? Which one would you recommend I go by?
That's it.
You're
That's
gonna be like, oh, it's gonna draw me into another online war or something.
No. You know what it is? Tafsirs are like it's like a personal interest. Firstly, the tafsir are only available in English. In Arabic, really, of any true value. Other tafsir are not. They don't even really count. I mean, I don't know. I've not. Maybe in Urdu, some, because Urdu's, people have done a lot of work. Like, so maybe in some Islamic languages, if I can call them Islamic or Muslim, that identify with the faith, they've done a lot of work to translate, but they're still not of the same. Like, so in Urdu, you will find some tafsirs that are good, but they still don't compare to even just like the average tafsirs in Arabic, just because of the language barrier. Like, you can't really, because in Arabic, they're going to open up the Arabic and they're going to say, well, this word could mean this and this word could mean this. And you can't really, when you do that to the non-Arabic speaking, it's like they don't understand what you're saying. So it doesn't really, you're just kind of just waffling on, because you're saying, look, in Arabic grammar, this could mean this, and this subject here could mean this, but the subject could also be the object, which could also be in the genitive or the accusative. And people are like, what the hell is this guy even saying? So whereas in Arabic it makes sense. So even today's kind of the story of Abu Uthman al-Mazini, that Arabic poem, that Adrumu inna musabakum rajulan, that why was rajulan such a big deal, and why were they saying it should be rajulun, was a whole debate. But in translating that, you couldn't really translate it apart, because it's not in the other languages. So because most languages today don't have inflections, so the words don't change. Like, so in English, for example, remnants or vestiges, like let's say you have the word them and they. So now they is the nominative, whereas them would be the genitive or the accusative. So it wouldn't be I saw they, I saw them. But now, like that in Arabic, every word has that. It changes between an, in, un, like that. So now this is going to make a huge discussion, as you can imagine, in trying to explain the verses, the grammatical, why is this case ending like this, and why. But to the non-Arabic speaking, that is all redundant, because none of that makes any sense to them. So they have to kind of completely miss all the Arabic part. But when you give the Arabic nuances, the meanings can slightly change. So, like today, when I said, look at this verse, I said it's amazing. وَمَا تَشَاءُونَ إِلَّا إِنْ شَاءَ اللَّهُ رَبُّ الْعَالَمِينَ. I said that, look how amazing and beautiful this verse is. that that one way that let's say a very apparent way people read it is that you can only will if God wills. But you read the same verse, وَمَا تَشَاءُونَ إِلَّا إِن يَشَاءَ اللَّهُ رَبُّ الْعَالَمِينَ, and then it's read as well, oh, you do not will except that God wills it. Now, how do you explain that? You can explain it, but they can't really see it because they don't understand Arabic. So all of these discussions get missed in a translation, and you just have the meaning discussion. Like, so we're going to say Allah says this in the verse, and you might say some people said it means this, and this was some historic event, and these are some rulings from this verse, but you can't really discuss more than that in a translation. So yeah.
So the second question I was going to move on to was, how was it decided upon?
We've got quite a few people waiting as well, so we'll try and wrap this one, and then we'll bring on some other people as well.
Okay, just so how was it decided the order of the Quran then?
Who put that that is a debate. That is a debate in the tradition. Generally, the discussion is that is the sequencing of the Quran tawqifi or is it ijtihadi? That is it divine or is it basically by ijtihad of people? So generally, most Muslims go with it is tawqifi, that this they put it in an order that it was meant to be put in that order. So the Prophet would have recited the Quran to them from beginning to end, and this is the order that they would remember it in. So that is generally what I would go with as well.
So he would have revealed all the Quran piece by piece, and then right at the end he would then.
So like generally what would happen, yes. So the Quran would incrementally grow because more verses would be added. But what would happen is the Prophet ﷺ usually, people say mostly in Ramadan, especially in the last few years, would recite the whole Quran. Whatever was whole at the time. So let's say there's still, we're in year 7. So up until year 7 Hijri, whatever is the whole of the Quran would be recited. And then in year 8, whatever is the whole in year 8 would be recited. Then in year 9, then so in the final year then. So now what the question is that, so in this time when the Prophet was reciting the Quran and people were listening, they were listening to a sequence as well. So they would recall that sequence. This is this view. I do accept that some people have challenged that and said that, look, no, they don't accept that. They think that this was done by ijtihad. So they feel that like in the time of Uthman, radiallahu an, and in the time of Abu Bakr as well, they feel that when people were putting the Quran as a book, they were doing it in what they felt was the right order to put it, for whatever reason. So they may have had their reasons. For example, let's start with the longest surah, work our way down, but then it doesn't go in a full sequential order like length. It doesn't work exactly like that. But then they had their reasons, whatever they were, and they put it in this order. So some people do feel that I think the majority will go with it was sequenced by the Prophet. So that's I know the Shia do question that, and they say that no, the order we have today, they feel it wasn't sequenced by the Prophet, and I think they try to criticize Uthman radiallahu an for doing that. So, but I don't really want to get into the sectarian side of things. So
can I leave you with something to ponder on?
Sure, I love pondering.
Right, so I've been looking at Zakaria, right? And there seems to be two Prophet Zakaria, right?
Oh, the Prophet Zakaria. Okay, Zakaria. Yeah. I thought you were talking about a person. I thought you were talking about.
Well, I've been
looking at some scholar. You said no, but when you said, I've just been looking at Zakaria, so I was expecting you to say, right, so this person's got some YouTube videos, and what he's been saying is
the book of Zakaria, right? So he seems to be a Jewish prophet, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. Now, when I started looking at his dates when he was around, he seems to have been around about 550 BC.
All right. Sounds about right, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, if he was custodian of Mary...
Oh no! You're mixing him up with Zechariah from Jesus's time.
Well, I don't regard New Testament as scripture at all.
No.
It's
But
very
that no. But
difficult to
this
regard
is
that as scripture.
see. Oh, wait, no, you see, you're mixing up. Are you not talking about from the Old Testament? Sorry,
Yeah,
is this hour as well? You're
Zechariah from the
talking
Old
about,
Testament.
yeah, you're talking about that, but that's not the other Zechariah that you're talking about is someone else.
Yeah, but the other Zechariah wasn't a Jewish prophet.
Sorry,
The other Zechariah wasn't a Jewish prophet. There's only
what do
one
you
Jewish
mean?
prophet that's named Zechariah, and he was in 550 BC.
No, these no. These names are very common. They're not like rare names in their tradition. So when you're talking about the prophets of the visions, and you're gonna have Jeremiah, you'll have Isaiah, these people, especially after Babylon has ransacked Jerusalem, and then they're taken to Babylon. At that point, this begins a lot of the kind of visions, and you'll get, especially these will be the key kind of prophets that come up, and and Jeremiah and these books. This is way before Jesus. This is way before. This is like approximately, you're talking about 500 years before.
Well,
so, yeah. So that, just because there's overlaps of names, it doesn't mean that they're the same people. No.
It's not just the overlaps in names. It's when the Quran's
It's not
talking
the same
to the Jews
person.
about
No,
Zechariah, it's talking about the Jewish prophet Zechariah. Is it not?
It's not talking about what you think it's talking. You see, the name Zakaria in the Quran is not speaking about who you're talking about from the Nevi'im. So these are the prophets of the temple, the temple era, that the Jewish temples. In fact, the Quran does not usually refer to them. It doesn't mention any of them usually. It won't address Isaiah. It won't address Jeremiah. I mean, I feel maybe there is an illusion, especially in the Valley of the Dead, but it doesn't mention the name once again. It doesn't mention, although it's speaking about the vision of the Valley of the Bones, but it's not mentioning the name of the prophet. It doesn't usually, so it's only addressing certain prophets by name. That's not from that temple era that you're speaking about, especially that
But the
era
story of
of
Zechariah is
exile and so on.
alluding to there being the
It
temple
isn't,
era.
Yar.
Is it not?
Isn't. No, it isn't categorically. Sometimes, something, I love the passion, and I think, may Allah increase you in passion and for learning and stuff. But when one of the things is, you have to understand it's important to empty the cup to take more, and don't, you see, especially when you're learning, it's good that you're going to be inundated with a lot of information. So don't understand that you will have discrepancies. It's going to take you yet months and years, and you're going to go through it, and you're going to get good at it, and you're going to learn stuff, and you're going to research, but it's okay. But I get it, there's a lot of information and it's inundating, but just understand that, look, when somebody's when you're corrected that it's not then just know that. But it's been epic, Darth Vader. You know what? May Allah increase you and bless you.
It's always a pleasure speaking to you.
Likewise, yeah. Stay blessed. Assalamu alaikum. Right.